He seemed very loving on the outside, but he was very cruel to me in bed. The first thing Lyra noticed about humans was that they talked far too much for a species with such small mouths. On Erivos 9, the artificial dawn had just flickered to life, a soft pulse of pink light washing across the translucent corridors. She adjusted her translator implant, trying to filter out the chatter of a dozen traders arguing about spice tariffs and engine parts. Humans, she thought, were a peculiar invention of the universe, noisy, restless, and chronically fascinated by things that exploded. Jonas Hale fit neatly into that category. He was standing on a repair scaffold, elbows deep in the guts of a floating transport drone, cursing under his breath as sparks jumped from a circuit panel. "You ever think the machines are trying to kill us?" he asked, not looking up. Lyra tilted her head, ears catching the faint oscillation of the drone's damaged core. "It's not trying to kill you," she said. "It's trying to escape." He turned, squinting through a film of grease. "Funny, you sound like my ex." She smiled. Was she also sentient hardware? He barked a laugh, and it startled her. The sound was warm, like a burst of static that managed to feel friendly. Humans emitted so many frequencies of emotion that her mind had trouble parsing them. She'd come to Erivos 9 as part of the empathic diplomacy program, a polite phrase meaning figure out why humans keep falling in love with things that can outthink them. Jonas offered her a hand smeared with some kind of lubricant that smelled faintly of burnt cinnamon. She ignored the gesture. Physical contact with humans was unpredictable. Their skin temperature varied wildly, and their emotional feedback loop was strong enough to trigger sensory overload in her kind. Still, he grinned as if he knew she'd refuse, and went back to wrestling with the drone. "I heard you're from the Vega cluster," he said. "That where everyone's got ears like radio antennas." "They're not antennas," she replied, flicking one sharply for emphasis. "They're sensory conduits. We can detect subtle emotional wavelengths." "Right," he said. "So, you can tell when someone's lying." "Easily. Then you'll hate me." That made her laugh, an involuntary, melodic sound that seemed to hang in the air longer than it should. He looked at her, surprised, maybe even a little delighted. Humans were so simple that way. Make them laugh, and they immediately believed they were winning. The drone gave a final hiss, then settled into a low hum of contentment. Jonas wiped his hands and leaned against the railing. "You know," he said, "for someone with emotional superpowers, you're surprisingly easy to talk to. Because you talk enough for both of us." He clutched his chest dramatically. "You wound me, Ambassador." "I'm not an ambassador." "Diplomat, empath, alien researcher, same difference. You're here to study us. I'm here to fix the stuff you break." "Humans built this station," she pointed out. "Exactly." He grinned again, and she felt something like static crawl across her skin. "Job security." Later, when the workday waned and the artificial sun dimmed to a cool lavender, Jonas convinced her to visit the orbiting gardens. The transport tubes shimmered with plasma light as they drifted upward. Lyra pressed her palm to the glass and watched the curve of Erivos 9 rotate beneath them. "You live in a giant metal bubble and pretend it's a planet," she murmured. He shrugged. "Fake gravity, fake weather, fake news. We make do." The gardens were suspended domes, filled with bioluminescent flora imported from half a dozen star systems. Plants glowed like captured nebulae. Jonas handed her a small fruit that pulsed faintly in his palm. "Try it," he said. "It's a glow berry." She eyed it suspiciously. "It's blinking." "Yeah, that's normal." "It's communicating distress." "Or joy. Hard to tell with fruit." She took a tentative bite. The flavor was sharp, electric, and she nearly dropped it. "It tastes like battery acid." "That means it's ripe." He laughed again, and she couldn't help but smile, though she didn't understand why. He was different from the other humans she'd studied. Less guarded, more chaotic. His emotions rippled outward like heat waves, impossible to contain. When a robotic gardener trundled past, Jonas saluted it. "Evening, Sprout." "Still murdering plants." The bot emitted a cheerful beep. Lyra tilted her head. "You greet machines?" "Sure," he said. "They've got better manners than most people." She considered that. On my world, machines handle our emotional regulation. They'd probably enjoy you. Everyone does it first, he said, half joking, half something else. They lingered until the dome lights dimmed, signaling curfew. On the walk back, the hum of the colony surrounded them, air recyclers sighing, plasma conduits whispering beneath the floor. Lyra's senses picked up faint electromagnetic fluctuations from Jonas himself, like static interference in her perception. Humans weren't supposed to emit that kind of signal. She told herself it was nothing, maybe just his tools resonating through his uniform. When they reached her assigned quarters, Jonas stopped. "You know," he said, "you don't have to analyze everything. Sometimes people just like each other. I'm not sure your species understands the difference between liking and studying," she said. He smirked. "Then you'll fit right in." As the door sealed behind her, Lyra pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the faint echo of his emotional frequency. It was erratic, magnetic, and far too bright. She should have logged the anomaly in her diplomatic report. Instead, she smiled to herself and thought, humans are dangerously fascinating. Outside, in the corridor, Jonas lingered for a moment longer, looking at the sealed door as if it had spoken to him. Then he chuckled softly, pocketed a glowing fuse, and walked away, whistling a tune that sounded suspiciously like a distress signal disguised as a love song. Lyra had been told that humans fell in love like comets, sudden, bright, and ultimately destructive. She hadn't planned on testing that theory herself, yet there she was, sitting across from Jonas in a diner suspended between two docking rings, watching him consume a food called a triple fusion burger. The thing was leaking neon green sauce and making faint sizzling noises, like it was preparing to launch. "Is it supposed to glow?" she asked. Jonas grinned through a mouthful. "If it stops glowing, you've got about 5 minutes before it mutates." She blinked. "And you eat that?" "Yeah. Builds character. Or removes organs." He laughed, waving for 2 more scent drinks, the bubbles inside them swirling like tiny galaxies. "Come on, you can't tell me Vega cuisine is any safer. You people eat energy crystals." "We consume emotional energy through resonance," she corrected. "It's not the same thing as eating rocks." "Sounds like a power-saving mode for romance." She hid her smile behind the rim of her glass. Humans had an odd way of flirting, half insult, half invitation. Jonas leaned forward, elbows on the table, and the lights from the plasma lane outside painted his face in alternating shades of violet and blue. He was handsome, in that unrefined, earthborn way. Too much confidence balanced precariously on a foundation of curiosity and caffeine. "I've been thinking," he said. "You ever get tired of analyzing everyone's emotions? Must be exhausting knowing what people feel before they do." "It's useful," she said. "It keeps us from making mistakes." "Sounds boring." "Efficient." "Same thing." She frowned. "You enjoy chaos." He raised his glass in mock salute. "I'm human. Chaos is our brand." Their drinks clinked together, a tiny spark arcing between the glasses. Static discharge, but it made Lyra flinch. Jonas only grinned wider. "See, chemistry." She rolled her eyes. "That was electricity." "Electricity's just chemistry with better marketing." She laughed then, a soft, melodic sound that made the couple in the next booth glance over. For a brief moment, she forgot that she was supposed to be studying him. She forgot about her reports, her mission, her duty to remain objective. He had that effect, pulling people out of orbit without warning. Later that night, they walked along the observation deck. The stars drifted lazily beyond the transparent hull, filtered through radiation shields that made them shimmer like molten glass. Jonas talked about Earth, the smell of rain, the weight of real gravity, the taste of oceans that hadn't been recycled through filtration tanks. Lyra listened, fascinated. "Why did your species leave?" she asked. "Because we could," he said simply. "We got tired of one sky. We wanted all of them." "Ambitious," she murmured. "Stupid," he corrected. "We built ships before we built wisdom." "That part hasn't changed." He smirked. "Careful. That almost sounded like flirting." "If it was, you'd know." "Would I?" She didn't answer. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but charged. Her neural sensors picked up the fluctuations in his bioelectric field, steady, strong, pulsing in rhythm with something like anticipation. Humans broadcast their desires like open comm signals, and she wasn't immune to interference. A sudden alarm broke the moment. A repair drone zipped overhead, beeping furiously, trailing a ribbon of smoke. Jonas groaned. Not again. What happened? That's my department. He sighed, already jogging toward the nearest maintenance hatch. If I don't fix that, it'll short out the whole oxygen grid. You coming? She hesitated. I'm not an engineer. Neither am I. But don't tell my boss. She followed, half running through the narrow access tunnel. The drone had wedged itself into a ventilation duct, sparks flying like miniature fireworks. Jonas reached for a toolkit and began muttering instructions that sounded suspiciously improvised. Lyra crouched beside him, the scent of ozone thick in the air. Do you know what you're doing? She asked. Absolutely not. Comforting. He grinned without looking up. Hey, if I blow us up, at least you'll have an interesting report. She watched as he pried open the casing and rerouted a handful of shimmering cables. The machine sputtered, then powered down with a relieved sigh. Jonas sat back, looking absurdly proud. See, easy. She raised an eyebrow. You disconnected its safety system. Temporary fix. It's sparking. Decorative. Jonas. Fine. I'll actually fix it tomorrow. He brushed soot from his hands and gave her a look that was half apology, half amusement. You're going to put that in your report, aren't you? Absolutely. He groaned. At least make me sound heroic. I'll say you fought bravely against a rogue ventilation unit. Perfect. He grinned, teeth flashing in the dim light. That's going in my report, too. When they returned to the main corridor, the artificial night had deepened. The glow of signage reflected in the glass panels, and people drifted like slow comets through the narrow halls. Jonas slowed his pace. You know, Lyra, I think I'm starting to understand you. Oh, you act all calm and logical, but deep down, you love chaos too. You just call it research. Incorrect. Denial. She laughed softly. You're impossible. And you keep showing up, he said, because you keep breaking things. He winked. Whatever gets you to spend more time with me. She shook her head but didn't deny it. As they parted at the junction, Jonas tapped the side of his communicator. Dinner again tomorrow? That depends, she said. Will the food still glow? Only if you're there. Flattery won't improve your odds. Didn't hurt them either. When she reached her quarters, she leaned against the door, feeling the faint hum of the station beneath her palms. The colony pulsed with life, with data streams, with human laughter and static and heartbeats that resonated through the air. Somewhere in the tangle of those signals was Jonas Hale, loud, chaotic, unpredictable. She told herself she was only studying him, only learning how humans connected. But even as she began her nightly report, her words dissolved halfway through, replaced by a small, inexplicable smile. The console flickered, glitching for a moment before steadying. Somewhere deep in the system, a faint electromagnetic signature pulsed back, as if the station itself had laughed. Lyra hadn't meant to end up in Jonas's apartment. It happened the way gravity happens, slowly, inevitably, and with a faint sense of impending disaster. He'd invited her under the pretense of showing her something cool, which, in human translation, meant mildly unsafe and probably illegal. When the door slid open, the smell of burnt ozone greeted her. Jonas stood in the middle of a chaotic workshop that looked like a machine graveyard had exploded. Half-dismantled drones hovered uncertainly near the ceiling, and something that might have been a coffee maker was glowing an unhealthy shade of orange. I call it home, he said proudly. It looks like a war crime, she replied. Hey, every great inventor starts with clutter. Or ends with it. He laughed and tossed her a pair of tinted goggles. Put those on. You're about to witness human genius at work. Should I alert medical? Not yet. He turned to a circular device on the table, about the size of a dinner plate. It hummed softly, lights pulsing in a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. She could sense it through her empathic field. I've been working on this for weeks, he said. It's a phase modulator, supposed to convert neural energy into controlled plasma output. She frowned. You build a weapon? An energy converter, he corrected. Theoretically harmless. Theoretically, she echoed. Famous last word of human scientists. Relax. I tested it on a chair. What happened to the chair? It achieved orbit. She took a careful step back. And you want to test it again? He grinned. With supervision. Yours. I am not authorized to oversee human combustion. Come on, Ambassador Sparkles. Where's your sense of adventure? My people removed it genetically. Despite her protests, she watched as he activated the device. A pulse of light filled the room, sharp and soundless. For a moment, her sensors went haywire, every emotional frequency around her blurring into one chaotic surge. When it cleared, the device was floating a few centimeters above the table, humming like a satisfied cat. Jonas looked delighted. It worked. It's levitating. Exactly as planned. Is it supposed to be spinning that fast? He turned just in time to see the device tilt, wobble, and launch itself across the room. It ricocheted off a wall, narrowly missing his head. Lyra ducked instinctively. The plasma field flickered, briefly outlining Jonas's grin. Still counts as progress, he said cheerfully. You nearly vaporized your own skull. Occupational hazard. Lyra sighed and flicked a switch on the wall, disabling the local power grid. The device dropped with a sad little plop. She glared at him. Human genius, you said. Hey, at least it didn't explode this time. She crossed her arms. You're fortunate your planet's species reproduces quickly. He chuckled. You really care, huh? I care about not being disintegrated. He grinned again, unreasonably pleased. Close enough. After the smoke cleared and the drones resumed their quiet buzzing, Jonas brewed 2 cups of coffee. Lyra eyed the liquid suspiciously. Is this safe for non-humans? Probably not, he said, handing it to her anyway. But it'll make you feel alive. She took a cautious sip. Her pupils dilated instantly. I can see sound. Yeah, he said. That's the caffeine. They sat in companionable silence for a while, broken only by the soft hum of cooling machinery. She found herself studying his face, the smudge of soot on his cheek, the faint pulse of energy that always seemed to surround him. It wasn't just his personality. He emitted something else, something that resonated beyond normal human frequency. She'd noticed it before, but now it was stronger. Jonas, she said softly, you're leaking. He blinked. Excuse me. Electromagnetic energy. It's radiating from you. He looked at his hands, then at the dormant modulator. Guess I overdid the calibration. This could destabilize your neural field. He shrugged. So I'll glow in the dark. Saves on lighting bills. I'm serious. Lyra, you worry too much. He smiled faintly. I've been like this for years. Ever since the accident back on Titan Station. Got caught in a reactor surge. They said I'd absorbed a trace of synthetic plasma. That's impossible, she whispered. He spread his arms. Apparently not. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm a broken circuit. She looked away. You're not broken. Just volatile. Romantic. I'm being clinical. He laughed softly. That's why I like you. You make insults sound like diagnostics. The tension eased again, their laughter echoing faintly through the cluttered room. Outside, the station lights dimmed as curfew approached, casting long shadows across the walls. The modulator flickered once, as if listening. When Lyra finally stood to leave, Jonas followed her to the door. You're not going to report this, right? That depends. On what? Whether you intend to build another one. He grinned. Already halfway there. She sighed. You are determined to shorten your lifespan. Better a short story than a boring one. As the door closed behind her, Lyra's implant vibrated with a faint pulse, an echo of Jonas's energy signature. It lingered longer than it should have, threading through her neural field like static. She placed a hand over her chest, trying to steady the rhythm. Somewhere deep in the corridors, the lights flickered twice, then steadied. The station had begun to hum in a new tone, faint but persistent, as if tuning itself to a frequency only she could hear. And in Jonas's workshop, the deactivated modulator blinked once, then twice, picking up the same rhythm as his heartbeat. Lyra hadn't slept in 3 rotations. Every time she closed her eyes, she could feel the pulse of the station, syncing with Jonas's heartbeat. The sensation wasn't painful, just wrong, like hearing a song played slightly out of tune. She tried recalibrating her neural dampeners, purging her empathic receptors, even bathing in ionized vapor, which humans charmingly called space showers. Nothing helped. Erivos 9 was humming his rhythm, and she couldn't turn it off. She found him in the engineering bay, standing ankle-deep in a tangle of cables, arguing with an interface drone that had developed opinions. "I told you to reroute the current through Junction 7. Jonas snapped. "Correction," said the drone in a polite female voice. "You suggested Junction 7. I chose a superior path." You blew a fuse. A small price for innovation. Lyra leaned against the doorway. "You appear to be losing an argument with a toaster." Jonas glanced over, grinning. "It's not a toaster. It's an artificial intelligence with trust issues. Perhaps it learned from its creator." Ouch. Early morning roast. She stepped closer, folding her arms. "You've noticed the fluctuations, haven't you? The energy surges that match your biometric pattern." He sighed. "You mean the light flickers every time I sneeze?" "Yeah, I've noticed." "That's not normal. It's kind of cool, though." "It's catastrophic." He shrugged. "Semantics." Lyra pinched the bridge of her nose. "Jonas, the station systems are responding to you. You've become a living transmitter." He gave her a mock salute. "Lieutenant Human Wi-Fi, reporting for duty." "Do you ever take anything seriously?" "Not if I can help it." The drone beeped in what Lyra could only assume was disapproval. "Recommend isolation protocol," it said. "Subject Hale exhibits anomalous energy output." Jonas waved it off. "Ignore her. She's been trying to quarantine me since Tuesday. Perhaps you should listen to her." "Come on, Lyra. You really think I'm dangerous?" She hesitated. "Not intentionally." "That's the best kind of not dangerous," he said brightly. They ran diagnostic scans anyway. The readings confirmed her fears. His neural lattice was radiating plasma harmonics far beyond human thresholds. His body was essentially broadcasting emotional frequencies into the station's infrastructure. Every spark of frustration, every burst of laughter, rippled through the power grid. "It's empathy feedback," she murmured. "My presence is amplifying it. Our emotional resonance is synchronizing." Jonas raised an eyebrow. "You're saying we're connected?" "Linked," she corrected. "Spiritually. Technologically." He grinned. "That's the least romantic explanation possible." "This isn't romance. It's science." "Same thing, different paperwork." She shot him a glare that might have melted steel if the plasma conduits hadn't flickered sympathetically. He winced. Okay, we'll fix it." They spent the next cycle isolating subsystems. Every time Jonas touched a control panel, the lights flared brighter. When he laughed, the floor vibrated. At one point, a vending unit began dispensing snacks in rhythm with his heartbeat. "Congratulations," Lyra said dryly. "You've achieved emotional capitalism." "Hey, at least the coffee machine likes me now." "Everyone likes you," she muttered. "Even the infrastructure." He shot her a sideways look. "That jealousy I hear? That existential dread you hear?" As they worked, she found herself studying him more closely. Beneath the humor, there was tension, a flicker of fear he tried to hide behind his grin. He knew something was wrong, even if he wouldn't admit it. When she reached for a console, their hands brushed, and the light surged so violently the entire bay went white. "Okay," Jonas said after the hum subsided. "I think we just short-circuited half the colony." Lyra's voice was tight. "You have to distance yourself from me. Our resonance is unstable." "Great," he said. "We're emotionally radioactive." "I'm serious." "I know. That's why I'm making jokes." The humor didn't help this time. The next power wave rolled through the grid, without warning. Emergency alarms wailed. The drone began screaming about overload containment. Jonas grabbed a stabilizer wrench and dove for the nearest conduit, yelling over the noise, "I can fix this." "You'll make it worse." Story of my life. He ripped open a panel, his hands glowing faintly blue as the current arced between his fingers. Lyra's sensors registered a surge of emotional energy, fear, determination, affection. Then the entire deck went silent. The lights flickered once, twice, and stabilized. Jonas sat on the floor, breathing hard. "See, told you I could fix it." She knelt beside him, scanning his vitals. His biofield was still pulsing, but weaker now, calmer. "You absorbed the excess charge," she whispered. "Guess I'm more useful than I look." "You could have died." "Yeah, but then who'd argue with the toaster?" The drone beeped indignantly. Disrespect noted. He grinned weakly, and for a moment, she almost forgot to be angry. "You risk everything for humor," she said softly. "Humor's cheaper than therapy." Later, when the alarm stopped and the engineers returned to their stations, Lyra helped him to his feet. The faint glow beneath his skin had dimmed, but it hadn't vanished. Something fundamental had changed between him, her, and the station itself. "Promise me you won't try another experiment," she said. "Sure," he said, "unless it's a really good one." She sighed. "Humans." He smiled tiredly. "You love us." "Against my better judgment." As they left the bay, the drone muttered, "Prediction. This partnership ends in combustion." Jonas patted its casing. "That's how all great romances start." Lyra rolled her eyes, but her lips twitched upward. Outside, the artificial night shimmered faintly, the stars beyond the dome flickering in sync with something only she could feel, a pulse shared between one reckless human, one cautious alien, and a station slowly learning how to feel them both. Lyra stood in the control core of Arrivo's 9, surrounded by a low hum that sounded suspiciously like breathing. The station had become aware, not fully sentient, but awake enough to sigh every few minutes as if dreaming of electricity. She couldn't tell if that was comforting or horrifying. Jonas was beside her, fiddling with a control panel that kept trying to flirt with him. "You know," he said, as the holographic interface cooed. "Touch me again, engineer. This place used to listen to me. Now it's in love with me." "It's reflecting your own energy field," Lyra said. "You turned an orbital colony into a narcissist." "Hey, it's still less clingy than my ex." She stifled a smile. "We need to focus. The synchronization has reached critical levels. If we don't separate your neural field from the grid, Arrivo's 9 will explode, implode, catch fire, turn into a sentient dating app." "Yeah, I've heard the briefing." "Jonas." He looked up, serious now. "I know." He was pale, faintly glowing at the edges. Every time his heart beat, the lights dimmed and brightened in rhythm. The entire station was alive to his pulse, and she could feel it thrumming in her bones. "I think it likes me too much to let go," he said softly. "You always did have that effect. Even on aliens. Especially on aliens." For a moment, their eyes met. He looked tired, but still somehow managed that crooked grin that had started all of this. "So what's the plan?" "I sever the empathic link," she said. "I absorb the residual frequency and reroute it through the plasma core. It'll stabilize the field, but you'll lose the connection." "Good. I've had enough of sharing my emotional playlist with an entire colony. It might also erase your energy signature." He frowned. "Meaning, you'll still exist," she said carefully. "But the station won't remember you. No one will. The link will be gone." He went quiet. For once, no jokes. Then finally, "That's one hell of a breakup." "Jonas." He smiled faintly. "Do it. I've always wanted to be the guy who saved something bigger than himself." She stepped closer, activating her neural resonance. The air shimmered. The station's hum deepened, lights flickering in a heartbeat rhythm. Jonas reached out, his fingers brushing hers. Energy arced between them, soft blue and white. "You're sure you can handle this?" he asked. "No." "Good. Means it'll probably work." She laughed despite the fear tightening her chest. "You're insufferable." And you're glowing. Again. Then the world went white. The surge tore through the station, data streams flashing like veins of lightning, conduits vibrating in harmony. The power grid roared, the plasma heart of Arrivos, 9 blazing brighter than it ever had. Lyra felt his energy, wild and bright, flooding through her circuits and into the core. Every memory, every laugh, every sarcastic remark passed through her consciousness like waves of warmth and static. And then, slowly, it began to fade. When she opened her eyes, the lights were steady. The hum had softened. The station was quiet, peaceful, alive, but no longer singing his rhythm. She stood alone. The engineers arrived minutes later, confused by the sudden calm. No one asked about Jonas Hale. His name wasn't in the crew database. His quarters were sealed and empty. Even the drone that used to argue with him denied knowing a human by that name. The system had purged him cleanly, as if he'd been rewritten out of existence. Only Lyra remembered. Weeks passed. The colony stabilized. Her reports to the Vega Council were full of data about human adaptability, emotional resonance, and the unquantifiable strength of humor under pressure. She wrote in precise, professional language. She did not mention him by name. But sometimes, late at night, she'd sit in the orbiting gardens, where glowberries swayed in artificial wind, and she'd talk quietly to the air. "You were right," she'd whisper. "Chaos is our brand." One evening, the coffee dispenser near her lab sputtered, beeped, and produced a single cup without being prompted. On the side, burned into the rim, were faint words. "Better a short story than a boring one." She smiled. "You sentimental idiot." The lights flickered once, just enough to make her ears twitch. She felt it then, a single pulse, faint but familiar, somewhere in the data stream. Jonas's signal, folded deep into the core of Arrivos 9, quietly keeping the station alive. She didn't tell anyone. Some things didn't belong in reports. Instead, she leaned back, watching the stars drift by the transparent dome. "You win," she murmured. "You get to haunt the machinery forever." The console hummed in reply, just one soft, playful buzz. Lyra laughed, a sound like static wrapped in sunlight. "Fine," she said. "But if the vending unit starts flirting with me, I'm deleting you." The hum deepened, amused. She could almost hear his voice in it, low, teasing, stubbornly human. And for the first time since he'd vanished, the station felt warm. The end.